Jamie, will you please do the roll call?
Councilman Jeff Capel,
Here.
Councilwoman Jill Cole, Councilman Lee Zerwanka,
Here.
Councilman Brian Gath,
Here.
Vice Mayor Pramod Javeri,
Here.
Councilwoman Katie Schneider,
Here.
Mayor Mark Cirkin.
Here.
7 present.
Do I have a motion to accept tonight's agenda?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October 13th, 2022?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any communications to council?
There are none tonight, Your Honor.
We have a report from an outside agency, the Hamilton County Resource Waste Management. Mary Kroppenbaker is here. Did I pronounce it right?
Close enough. It's Kroppenbaker. but-
Kroppenbaker.
Thank you guys very much for having me this evening. I will be fast, I promise. So I'm the Assistant Solid Waste Manager with Hamilton County Resource, formerly known as Hamilton County Recycling and Solid Waste District. We are a non-regulatory county office that's within the Department of Environmental Services. We're under the Board of County Commissioners, but like I said, we're non-regulatory. Our entire mission is to reduce the amount of waste that's going to the landfill. So I'm here just to give you guys a little bit of an update about our plan update process. Before I jump into that, I want to highlight a couple of programs that we have already in place for communities. And I think you guys have a handout if you want to kind of follow along with what I'm saying. But the main program that I think you guys are interested in is probably the Residential Recycling Incentive Program, where we provide funding to communities based on their diversion rate. So the higher you or the more waste you divert, the more money you get from us. And last year, I think you guys got about $30,000 for waste and recycling programs. We also do outreach campaigns for residents about food waste and recycling. We have a full-time sheriff's deputy that investigates cases of illegal dumping. So if you have any kind of problematic sites, you can let him know. And then we have drop-off programs for residents as well. So one of the functions of a solid waste district is that we have to update a 15-year solid waste plan every 5 years that shows 2 things. One, that we have enough landfill capacity for all of the projected waste that's going to be produced in Hamilton County. And 2, then to outline all of the programs that we're going to have to reduce that waste and meet state mandated recycling goals. And so that's why I'm here today, is to tell you about our plan. We've been working on the plan since 2021. We submitted it to Ohio EPA for review, a draft of it. We're incorporating some comments right now, and then we will send the plan out for ratification in early 2023, so the first quarter of next year, which is why I'm kind of here to give you guys a heads up that we'll be asking for that. So once we send the plan out for ratification, we have 90 days to get approval from at least 60% of our, or communities representing 60% of our population, and from the largest municipality, which would be the city of Cincinnati. And our last plan did have 100% approval, in case you were wondering. So the plan is on our website at hamiltoncountyresource.org under the About Us tab, but it is 300 pages long. So I will give you just a couple of highlights of programs that I think you're probably interested in. The first is the Residential Recycling Incentive Program that I mentioned earlier. It's still in there. It is budgeted to be the same amount with a couple of changes. One that I think you will probably be most interested in is that we are going to allow communities to start including commercial diversion metrics towards their diversion rate. So right now it's only residential numbers, but you will be able to include commercial diversion towards your total in the future. I have to imagine that that will kind of benefit the Blue Ash area. We are also going to institute that a community gets a baseline amount from us. So we have a couple of communities that get under $1,000 currently. So we are going to create some sort of baseline, probably about $5,000, so that any community is getting kind of some sort of significant funding towards waste and recycling programs. Another change is that we are planning to increase the amount of commercial assistance that we provide. So 86% of the waste in Hamilton County actually comes from the commercial and industrial sectors. And we have not allocated probably a reasonable amount or kind of a proportional amount of funding and staff time towards those sectors. So we're planning on increasing funding to do more kind of active work and programs in those sectors. We also hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant this past year to look at our programs, kind of from a DEI lens and provide us some recommendations. Their recommendations are incorporated into the plan if you read it, or they have a separate report on our website as well. But this is something that's really important to us. We want to make sure that our programs are being reached by everyone in the county. The very last thing that I want to mention is we are researching one other thing for this plan, which is what will happen if we were to change the tipping fee for out of district waste. So specifically for counties outside of Hamilton County. So like Montgomery County and Butler County, if we were to increase their tipping fee to our landfill, would that actually affect the amount of waste that we're getting or not? So we're not sure that we're going to actually do that. We're just currently researching that possibility, but that would not affect any kind of tipping fees to residents, businesses, anyone within the county. So that's all that I really wanted to mention. If you have any questions about the plan, happy to answer a couple now, or I also included our solid waste managers information in your packets. Michelle Balls, she's the one who actually wrote the plan, so she's a great one to actually answer your questions too, if you have any.
One question I had is, and you started talking about it already when you mentioned more that's being done on the commercial side of things. So similar to that, are there plans where we can get more done, whether it's directly through your agency or just helping local governments get more into apartments and condos so that we can increase the numbers there?
Absolutely. That is one of the toughest nuts to crack. And I have an RFP out right now to work with source some sort of marketing agency to really get in front of multifamily property managers. It's definitely one. It's also one that comes up a lot in the diversity, equity, and inclusion talks. So we're working on it. I don't have a perfect answer for you, but it's if you have apartment complexes or you know of some already, we're happy to work with them too.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
We're going to move to hearings from citizens. If you wish to speak, please approach the microphone and state your name and address. And if you have any materials to pass out, please give them directly to the clerk of council. Please keep your comments as brief as possible to allow others a chance to be heard. Hearings from citizens is for us to listen to you and your neighbors. It's very unlikely we'll make any remarks immediately after you speak. We need to have a chance to reflect on your comments, research the subject, consider city codes and legal issues. Sometimes during miscellaneous business, we do revisit an issue brought forward. The clerk of council will notify you when 3 minutes has passed, and at that point, please wrap up your presentation. Most importantly, let's all treat each other calmly and with respect. Is there anybody that would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Denise Gretchen, and I am at 4911 Cooper Road, 45242, the Blue Ash Branch Library. I'm the new manager there, but I am not a new manager. I'm seasoned. I come from Anderson Township, and I have enjoyed my first 2 months in Blue Ash. This is my second council meeting, and I just wanted to introduce myself so that you all will know who I am when I'm here. And if anyone has any questions, I am willing to answer.
Just a comment. We love the Blue Ash Library. I've been going there for years and years as I was raising my children, and now as an adult, I continue. So thank you for being there.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else like to say anything? Seeing none, we're going to move on to committee reports. We're going to move to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee, Councilman Zerwanka.
Jamie, sorry. Nope. First off, I have a motion setting the budget study session for Monday, November 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, Jamie, please read resolution number 2022-59 by title only.
Authorizing the emergency purchase of equipment.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-59.
Second.
Discussion.
So this is just a reality of the market right now. And in the language, it says equipment approved. You can go ahead and purchase equipment without the bidding process for things that are already in the budget. I don't remember. We saw a police top line. I don't remember if there, how many vehicles are we talking about, or what's the scope of this, or?
And since you're new, I'll just remind you, typically, if it's less than 50,000, you wouldn't approve it via legislation anyways. But there's a good chance that it's over 50. The immediate need is a particular public works truck. And then, Kelly, remind me, I think there was two other parks and two parks and rec truck.
A truck for golf maintenance and a truck for park maintenance.
Yeah, and those are doubled as snow plow for the lighter roads and parking lots and what have you. So
Basically, supply chain issues. This helps speed up the process. So
Or like the next fiscal year, this is.
So for next fiscal year, we'll see what happens, is the answer. And if we have to do this again, we'll ask it. This is just to kind of finish out this fiscal year. But yeah, just to put it in perspective, we have 4 police cars that we ordered over a year ago, and we still haven't gotten those yet. We had a canine truck canceled 2 weeks ago. They just said they weren't going to honor it. And now it was less than 50. So we found quotes and managed to find one in Toledo. So yeah, it's just a weird environment. And so we're either going to have to start regularly figuring out how to bid ourselves for that type of ordinary equipment, or hope the state gets back and provides a master list we can buy off of.
Yeah, just to confirm, some of the other jurisdictions that I have done similar things. I mean, police cruisers now, you're looking at 16 months to deliver.
Yeah, in ordinary times, I wouldn't even want to look at something like this, but considering the supply chain issues that are out there, particularly with the automobiles, unfortunately, when there's unideal situations, it sometimes calls for unideal solutions to it. And I think this gives the flexibility to get us through this point. Just one question I'd have on it, which is kind of related to it, is it's not only getting automobiles that's a problem, getting auto parts is also a real problem, which means when they tell you you got to keep your car longer, well, it gets harder because you can't get the parts. Are we also doing something kind of similar to this to try to just stay as stocked up as possible? So if we're in a non-ideal situation where our backup plan is keep the car longer than necessary, we're as best equipped as we can be for something like that.
I think we're already past that point, unfortunately.
anyone else? Amy, please call the roll.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Zerwanka,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Javari,
Yes.
Mayor Serkin,
Yes.
7 yeses.
all I have, Mayor.
Okay, we're going to move to Planning and Zoning Committee, Vice Mayor Javari, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is ordinance. Do I need 2 readings on this one, or we already did?
I would just, Ms. Eifert can just read it because we read it last time already. So that's the second, this would be the second reading now.
So it becomes a resolution or something?
No, just ask Ms. Eifert to read the ordinance and then go from there. Then you can have a vote because this will be the second reading.
Okay. Can we please read the ordinance number 2022-08 by title only, please?
Approving a combined concept and final development plan for a planned unit development for a 1.7 acre parcel at 10635 Techwoods Circle in the Summit Park zoning district. And as mentioned, this is the second reading.
Move to suspend the rules of the council. No,
Don't have to.
Just move to adopt or
Move to
whatever.
adopt the ordinance number 2022-008.
Second.
All discussion? Any discussion on this particular? This is where they are applying for the Red Dog. It's a property which used to be a Applebee, and that's where they're trying to put this Red Dog system. Anybody has any questions?
I have a couple comments. I'm happy to do them first. There was a concern from Planning Commission who denied this application because one of the reasons was because it's a PUD and it's less than 3 acres. My personal feeling about that is 3 acres is an arbitrary value. It could be 2, it could be 10, it could be 1, it could be 100. That's just what's in our code. This property has been sitting vacant for years and it looks pretty rough. I think that the architect can deal with some of the concerns of the elevation on the west side of the property, which is where the fence meets Reed Hartman Highway. I just don't see a compelling reason after a property that's been sitting for 5 years that we wouldn't let somebody come in and develop it. And it's very similar to a property 2 doors down, which is also an animal care facility. It fits the neighborhood. There's no residents anywhere near this property that would be affected. So I'm very much in favor of it. And I read the comments from Planning Commission and I just don't find them as compelling as that I have to abide by their decision.
Just because the nature of your comment was you were going to vote in favor, I do want to just highlight to everyone else that because Planning Commission recommended non-approval of it, you'll need a extra majority, so this can't be a 4-3
It'll
vote.
need to
so,
be 5-2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or 5-1
Or
or
5-1 or
or
5-0.
5-0.
Okay, that was terrible.
And I just have one question that they were going to work out with Dan Johnson or the Paul about the fence. Did you make any changes? Can you update on that one before we take the votes? Or anybody who can answer?
I can chime in. So we would just recommend if council would like to approve the project, that you condition the approval upon the applicant coming back and working with the city staff and architect on the western frontage.
Would that include just the fence, or could that be a consideration of possibly reorienting the project?
I think reorienting the project.
Meaning so that the
Would-
front door. would
No, I know
face-
what you're saying. I'm just saying that I think reorienting the project would be what I would call major modification. And so typically, if you recall, we've had this discussion before about what's a modification and what have you. I think we probably would make them go back through the process again, rather than us administratively saying, do that. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't make that recommendation as part of it and they go back to Planning Commission for that, but just something, if that's a desire you want, in addition, you probably ought to articulate that, hey, we want you to re-examine it. So then you're entering the category of you're approving this as is or not approving it. But if you want to make a lot of changes, then you're almost more like, hey, we just want to give you conditional approval, but not final approval. We want to see you do everything different and then make them come back for a final approval, if that's the nature of what you want, because that starts to become pretty significant. And I would make them kind of go through a final approval process, if that makes sense.
I've driven the project. Actually, I went down to the Red Pet Resort down on Madison today, and just to kind of look and see what it looks like. You know, daycares and doggy cares are amenities that, you know, people that live in the city, and especially if we're trying to attract our workers back to the city, it's something that apparently is pretty important. I don't need them, but I hear that they're important to other people. But I was, you know, of course, it's a nice facility down on Red Bank Road, and kind of like you, Mark, I hate to see an asset in the city sitting unused. And when you look around what's around there, you know, there is the veterinary center, there's a child daycare center, there's the gathering place, and then there's a big industrial building right to the south. And it just seems, you know, for the fact that the Summit zoning border is at Creek Road, which is about 150 yards north of where this property is located, it would be an acceptable use. So, you know, it's easy to say no, but, you know, is there a way that we can make this work that we're happy as a city and that we feel like it's a good use?
That, Jill, so my understanding is that there are basically three options
Right.
with getting this in that location. And one was a PUD. Two was changing that zoning line. That's, like you said, about 850 feet or so. Or a zoning text amendment, which I think would not be ideal because then
Right.
you would allow these anywhere. So I'm also in favor, I think, of having this. It seems like it fits the location. And whether we do it as a PUD or make them go back through and do kind of the zoning line change.
Yeah, and
I don't know if that's just a technicality or.
And the PUD, you know, at least the text as I understand it, it said, you know, it's a minimum of 3 acres, but there's the ability to approve it if it's less than that, if it's an infill or, you know, a redevelopment, which clearly this is. And I really respect the work that the Planning Commission has done, you know, but I think we all come at this from different perspectives and have different ideas, and that doesn't make the work invaluable on anyone's part, but it's just, you know, how are we looking at the problem? Or this, not the problem, the situation.
One thing that I'd want to raise here is, while the best argument in favor of this is definitely that the property has sat vacant for a while, it's just the part I'm having a harder time getting past is just that the zoning code does not allow this use in this area. And when I think back to previous instances, let's say within the last 3 or 4 years where we've given, you know, some form of relief from the zoning code, it's been largely based on the size of the property itself. Like one property was shaped like my cell phone is. So if they were trying to meet a setback, the required setbacks, that was going to be impossible for that applicant or any other applicant because, you know, you can't get like 3-inch setbacks on both sides from this cell phone. So you have to make allowances there. Or another case where was you had a property that was very small and oddly shaped. Well, again, you could say no to that applicant, but any future applicant's going to face the same problem that the size of the property just wouldn't allow anything else without some kind of reasonable relief. That's not an issue here. It's just that if the zoning code itself does not allow this type of facility in this area, I'm afraid if we approve this as is, that we're setting a precedent that essentially turns the zoning code into a suggestion box. And that this goes well beyond just some reasonable relief based on obvious circumstances, but that it's kind of turning the zoning code into an etch-a-sketch or a suggestion box or just something that it's there but doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm not even necessarily 100% against figuring something out, but it's that I can't get to a yes until we figure out something better than just outright saying that we're going to allow something that's not allowed there because. So that's where I'm at right now.
So this is not intended to lobby at all. I just want clarification, particularly for a number of you who may not have gone through these type of processes again. What Jeff's describing is a variance, and this is not a variance. Jeff's describing, and that typically goes in front of the BZA. And so I just want everyone to understand that's a different process. The PUD, you are right when you say it's not allowed in the zoning district, but by definition, a PUD is a new zoning district. So then what you decide within the PUD is whatever you want. So for instance, at the development of Summit Park, that is a PUD. Those homes, those single family homes that are in there would not be permitted. But because you put a PUD overlay zoning district on it, and as part of that, you stipulated that their setbacks and everything is in there, you in fact aren't granting a variance, and they no longer are not complying with the zoning code because they now have a PUD. It's a new zoning district. And a PUD just says this mini zoning district is in fact, we are allowing the things within that mini zoning district. So I appreciate the analogy, but I don't want anyone to think that if you did this by PUD, you're granting them special dispensation when you're not. You're rezoning that property to a PUD with that development plan as allowable uses within that PUD, much different than setbacks and things like that. So I just want to provide that clarification for council. And again, that's not lobbying for or against. I just want you to understand the difference.
And my
Right,
understanding
and-
too, though, is that the PUD, it just applies that only to that property. And that was one of the reasons that it was maybe thought it was a good idea to approach it from this way, just so that it limited this use to that.
Yeah, and so for instance, when you approved, what's the name of the development that MI has, the Arabella, the development as well as the Daventry, those would not be permitted if you didn't do the PUD. But by putting the PUD in, you in fact establish a zoning district that says these single-family homes are now permitted, and including their setbacks. So.
Right, and a PUD, that is correct that the PUD allows us to, well, pretty much do whatever the heck we want. But still, when I'm looking at a PUD that's in front of me, I still like to look at what does the zoning code there say, so that if I'm going to vote for something in a PUD that allows us to do something contrary to what the zoning code is, that I understand exactly why, and that there's a clear argument that justifies it. And you know, as I noted before, usually when we've been doing that, it's because there's something involving the property itself that states that gives you your reason right there. It's just right here. I'm not quite seeing that, where if the area is zoned for, or to state that this kind of facility is not allowed, then, but why are we passing a PUD that says it is? Yeah, you can use the PUD to legally do it, but what's the reason why? That's where I'm missing it.
Where? On this topic, I suppose my biggest hangup is the respect I have for our planning commission. The years that many of them have spent doing this, if they say no, I pay great attention, as I'm sure we all do. But after reading through this, I think that this is a good use. One of the things that is on my mind is that our zoning districts don't blend. You can't blend them unless you created another blended district. You know, we have hard lines. On one side of the street, it's allowed. On the other side of the street,
Right.
It's not allowed. And here we are at the very edge of one of our districts where that blending really is appropriate. I think it's a good use. I think it's obviously something that's already in the neighborhood. I think it's an amenity to the city. They're not going to stop me from going to Camp Bow Wow, and Boomer loves it there. But you know, there are times when you can't get in, and people need other things. My biggest concern, because I haven't done this before, is what conditional statements do we need to add to this? I don't see a landscape plan. I'm concerned about the vinyl fencing. I don't want to pass this willy-nilly without other, you know, that expertise of a planning commission or staff to come up with those things on the edges.
Would it be appropriate if we get to this point to offer a motion that the approval is conditional on the city architect and city staff approving an updated elevation on the west side? Would that be a simple way to do
More
it?
on just the west side, isn't it? The vinyl fencing.
Yeah, it actually goes on other sides, but I think our concern visually was the
Yeah.
west side. That makes sense. And yeah, if you think you've had discussion, you want to move along and make an amendment, so to speak, you can say, we're approving this conditionally, and then put some general conditions on there, which would be something along the line of, you know, we want to revisit to it. So in other words, you're not granting them final approval on this. And I suspect what we would do as part of that process, we probably would send it back to Planning Commission for final approval with these new marching orders. After staff and the city architect work through that, we'd probably go back to them one more time. And it wouldn't come back to council at that point, because Planning Commission would say, we think this meets what council was saying, and they would just, between us and Planning Commission, they would do it. They still have the option of forwarding it to you, but that's how procedurally I think would be best to do it. And we've done it that way before.
And they'd be able to look at the landscaping in that process too?
Whatever you wanted to condition, I should say. I just use the fence as one. If you wanted
I mean, there's one, and even on zoning appeals, or you know, we would see a detailed landscape plan, and I don't want to make it so that what we do here tonight means they don't have to have any landscaping or something.
My comments are kind of similar to Jeff's about precedent here. I was at the planning commission meeting. I did hear deliberations and such, and they were following the zoning code, okay? And yes, to your point, we have hard lines. If they moved just a little further up to the north side of Creek Road, it's all fine. But where it is, no, that's why they're going through this process of the PUD. And my understanding of PUDs have always been for large projects. Summit Park, that was a PUD, such as, and even right now, what we're working on, Kenwood and Cooper, that's probably going to be a PUD. So I don't see it being used for this. The other concern I have, you know, we have two other doggy care or pet care places within feet of this location. I have a little concern when we start competing against our own businesses and what we're putting in. You know, are we going to put another business out of business because we're putting this one in and such? I don't know, but that's my concern. So I'll be voting against this. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And it's a good project. Don't get me wrong. It's just wrong location, wrong process.
To your comment on the PUD and the size, if I may, when I was in Dublin, they had a similar requirement for a size for their PUDs normally, but they also used it for anything that was odd. So a church in a residential area, it was odd, it was permitted, but it was odd. And the city really liked being able to say, we can tell you a whole lot more about what you have to do in a PUD than we have to in general zoning. And so I don't have the same hang up, I guess.
Any more discussion?
No, I think, like I said, the one condition that Councilman Capel talked about was this is unusual. And I think having a business close 5-6 years ago is an unusual condition. That definitely changed kind of my way of looking at this right off the bat. Want to be a little bit more understanding that that property needs to be redeveloped.
Well, I understand
This,
that.
I think, is a very fair
I'd rather
alternative.
stick within our zoning that we have. So.
Chairman, I have a motion. I move that we approve this conditional on work with the city architect and staff to address the west face of the building, specifically the fencing, and to provide a landscaping plan that is sufficient for the property.
I'll second.
Okay,
So then are we voting on, is this an amendment or are
Amend
we
it.
changing the
Amendment.
motion?
To amend it,
So we're-
correct.
it's an
And then
amendment.
we'll go back and vote on it.
And then, so then my question to the solicitor is this amendment written like narrowly defined enough that it's followable, that you can follow it? Or is this so wide you can drive a truck through it? Thanks. Sure. Thank you.
And we need to vote on the motion to amend.
can we? Would you please call?
So this is a vote, yes is a vote to amend.
Amend the motion.
Mr. Waltz made a good recommendation here that we take out the word final in development plan, only because it's going to go back to the planning commission for the final development plan. So I would ask that somebody add that to did we vote on the motion yet?
No, we have not.
All right, so Mr. Gath, if you would amend your motion, because you have the right to amend your motion, then let's do that.
I move to amend this ordinance by replacing the word final with the word conditional.
Second.
But it includes the other.
Including the other
Including
two,
the other part.
including the other two, which I've written. in.
I
Okay.
second.
Now we're talking about
Just-
amendment first.
Just the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Jamie's going to call it.
Jamie Close.
Vice Mayor Javari,
No.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilman Zerwanka.
No.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Mayor Cirkin.
Yes.
5 yeses, 2 nos to amend.
Okay, so now you have the amended development plan. So I know we don't have to read it, but it says an ordinance number 22. This is why I don't read the ordinances.
2022-08.
Ordinance number 2022-08, approving a combined concept conditional development plan for a planned unit development for a 1.7 acre parcel at 10635 Techwood Circle in the Summit Park zoning district. And I've added at the end in my chicken scratch, and consultation with city staff and architect on a landscaping plan with proper orienting of the fence. Okay, that's what you have now.
Is orienting what we're looking for? It's not what
No,
we're looking for.
we're
We're looking
for-
for the materials or
Oh,
something. It's,
Thank you.
Aesthetics, material
Design.
and
Well,
landscaping.
that's why I asked.
yes, that's good.
Yeah, my question was about reorienting it to have the front door kind of along Reed Hartman, but we
Maybe.
decided that maybe wasn't a good idea, so.
Let me read, in consultation with city staff and architect on a landscaping plan with proper design of fence.
And landscaping. Yeah, okay, you got that, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
That's your, I need a motion to that effect.
We just voted.
No,
on
we
that
need a
motion.
motion
Oh,
to
we just voted on
adopt
the
it.
Motion to
title?
adopt the amended,
Adopted as amended.
adopted as amended.
I move we adopt this as amended.
There you go.
Second.
Please,
Now
Any
we-
further
call.
discussion?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Any further discussion?
another discussion.
So this is the final vote then?
This is the final.
Yeah,
vote.
on the amended
Final vote on
version.
the amendment. with
On the
three
amended
things.
conditional approval.
With the west elevation,
And the
aesthetics.
conditional development instead of, right?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, Vice Mayor Javari,
No.
Councilman Capell,
No.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilman Zerwanka.
No.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Mayor Cirkin.
Yes.
4 yeses, 3 nos.
Does Mr. Walt, sorry,
Does not carry as amended.
got it. Under the charter.
You up? Yep. So it did not get a supermajority, as you understand, which means we're not overturning what the planning commission's rulings were. All right, we're going to move to miscellaneous business. Jamie? Oh,
I
I'm
have-
sorry, David. What am I saying? I have David.
I'll just say I have nothing tonight and you cannot ask me later.
Amy, we
I don't know. why.
nudge the city manager and tell him
Yes.
it's
I have a hokey comment. What a pretty night it was tonight. The leaves and the color and the sun and sunset and all that. Gets depressing this time of year to have the meeting start so dark, but it was nice this afternoon. So other than that, I really have nothing substantive to add.
Nothing. Kelly?
I just really enjoyed watching our solicitor put that together for you. That's the hardest he's worked at a council meeting in a while.
You mean to say, you nice to see him working?
I beg your pardon. Have you sat through these meetings? It's a lot more work than it should.
Fun. So John Bishop with Circle Development, he's walking by the windows just now, but he did send us an update to City Hall today to let us know that they have hired a contractor to do the demolition of Ringo Lanes in downtown. So that work will begin probably the end of next week. So
Which in construction terms means July
Who
of
knows?
2023.
Yes, exactly. And then also, in response to a council request to revisit the CRA program, there was a memo in your council packet with really just some general observations about what the program has done and really also what the market has done. And so I'm just looking for council feedback.
Or as always, if you just want to think about and bring it up in a future meeting, but the ball is now in your court whenever you want to address that is more accurately. It doesn't have to be done now.
Two questions I have. One, which it's not written directly in here, so I'm curious how it could work is, I know I've mentioned a little bit before about one part of this program I don't like. I call it a loophole, even though the people doing it are completely following the law, where let's say somebody has a $200,000 piece of property and then they tear down the property. Now we're just down to a $25,000 lot. Then they build a $400,000 home on top of it. They end up getting the tax abatement for everything over the $25,000 piece of property, which to me, I call it a loophole because I would think something like that, the amount that's abated should be the original 200 to 400,000, meaning that in that situation, I think that should be a $200,000 abatement, not a $375,000 abatement, because in the end, you improve the property by $200,000, not by $375,000 after you rent down the original property. So do we have any option available that would allow us to do something like that?
So let me first just add that you're right. Typically what happens when a home is demolished, the builder will file an affidavit of demolition with Hamilton County, and that will reduce the value down to the land value only. But when the new house is constructed, that land value goes from $25,000 to $150,000 in land value, and they're always paying tax on the land. So in my experience, it's that amount of tax is getting recouped in the new higher land value. So there's no loss to the school district. But, you know, it would be tough, but we could try some sort of, you know, you always have to pay a certain minimum amount and then you get abatement on what's on top of that.
But just to reiterate, so you're right theoretically, but what they being the auditor's office, I believe has figured out is if you bought a $200,000 house and tore it down, it's not the house value now, it's the property value. So they don't always get it exactly 200, but to her point, they are now adding the land value. The old land value ends up showing up as a higher amount once the new house gets put on there because they almost recognize, well, you bought it for a tear down. That means you didn't really buy the house, if that makes sense. So I think abates 90% of that particular concern.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just without, I'd be interested in looking further into that, just because I know whenever I go to the Hamilton County Auditor site and I look at the property values, they break it down between building and land, and the land doesn't usually change a whole lot. So I'd be interested in at least looking further into that. Appreciate the answer we've got so far. Then the other question I had was, when this has come up in recent years, I can kind of vaguely remember a comment being made about how to some extent this involves being a participant in a county program, which was described to me as kind of a take it or leave it, whatever the county says is part of this is part of it, and that much can't be changed. So I would just be interested in getting a clarification on, like, is there anything about this that we don't have the ability to alter or change at all?
So yeah, we can't change things like, you know, Hamilton County will only put a tax abatement on the tax roll at the same time that they would place the new value on the tax roll. So we can't change the timing. We can't say you're going to pay taxes for 3 years and then your abatement will start. That is a hard and fast Hamilton County rule. So certain things like that, you're always going to pay tax on the land. That's a, you know, probably a state of Ohio rule actually. But there are lots of things that we can impact. We can impact the term. 8 years total is our current term. We could reduce it. We could increase it up to 15. We can impact the percentage of the abatement. Right now, it's 100% for single family, 50% on multifamily. We could change those percentages. We could also provide a cap. You're not going to get an abatement above $500,000. You have to pay tax on any value over that amount. So there's a lot of flexibility in here, but I think I hit the highlights of what you can't impact.
Thanks. Yeah, those are my two initial questions. And then I'll just one more comment before we let others chime in is one thing I would be interested in doing is a cap, because the purpose of the program is to jumpstart improving a neighborhood that needs it. If we're giving abatements on $900,000 new homes, I mean, that's not the purpose of this. And it makes us look like that we're more interested in building mansions than improving neighborhoods that need it. So those are my initial thoughts. I'm definitely interested in what others think.
I think with the neighborhoods where the district is right now, to do that cap, I'm just making numbers up here at 500,000 because that's basically your average for the entire neighborhood. I'm talking old and new, okay? You're not going to build a $1 million house next to a $200,000 house. It just doesn't work, okay? But I could see a cap if you brought it down into the average, yes.
Comments are similar in a way. So obviously the program's been really successful. But also with the information you've given us, Kelly, and Hazelwood as kind of a control group, it seems like a lot of this development possibly would have happened without this program. So on the one hand, are we incentivizing and we're kind of giving this away for something that would have already happened? However, I'm not saying that we should end the program. I think we should continue it. I think it's been really successful. We've heard from residents who've come in and said, it's made a big difference. It's helped their neighborhood. So I think that we should keep it. I was a little surprised by some of the data you shared, and the rental numbers are lower than I thought. And the code violation decreases is a huge positive. So I think keeping that momentum going would be a benefit to the city. So I would propose putting a cap on that. I don't know how we work out, what everybody's thoughts are on what that would be. How, if you could somehow make it more equitable with some of the comments, if you're saying the land value they're not really going back down to zero, maybe it's kind of a moot point, but your comments in here say the average value, I think, is 400,000. So can we cap it at that? And that makes it more fair across the board. So those homes, actually, I think in Arcadia, we have seen some of those $600,000-$700,000 homes go in next to one that's not nearly that much. But capping it, and then if there's the opportunity to shrink the area or not. I know that the hot spots on here, and there's some streets that haven't taken advantage of it at all. Does that mean they don't really need it? Then likely I don't think we need it in place if after 8 years we haven't had any applications. So yes, I guess my proposal would be to cap it, and capping that at your recommendation at 400,000.
Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to be a contiguous area.
Contiguous, yeah.
Yes.
That's correct. If you wanted to sort of create an island, we could have an entirely separate program for that new neighborhood.
I guess my question with this was, though, it's been pretty successful through many of these neighborhoods, but, and Katie, maybe your point is correct that it's just not going to work in certain neighborhoods, but are there things and are there ways that we could make this more attractive or more desirable in some of those areas where it hasn't really taken hold?
Or is it just, we're going to pick the best options first? If I'm going to be a builder and I'm going to build this up, I'm going to take the cheapest house with the largest lot in the very best location first. And I think we've seen a lot of activity in Acadia because those lots are bigger than a lot of the other lots. And some of those houses were in really terrible shape. We did see in Hazelwood, I was interested, we did see in Hazelwood a nice reduction in the amount of code violations. What we don't have a handle on is how much investment has gone into that neighborhood. And my guess is it's dramatically different, lower than in other places. So while the rising tide may have gotten everybody a little bit, I think that this program has made an impact in these neighborhoods. The other thing that is bouncing around my mind is how effective do the significantly smaller lots have some other problem, whether it's zoning and setbacks or something that's preventing them from building a house that is
Economically viable.
Maybe we need to do something else, or maybe we just need to wait until they get through the larger lots somewhere else. If we were going to make any changes, I think Kelly's point in here at the end is very well made, is we need to be very upfront about this and give a long enough lead time, people are making commitments based on the existence of this plan. But if we're going to entertain changes, I'd like to see a public hearing and some communication about this as well before we make changes.
I do, Brian, I think you bring a great point, and I would have probably said it after Katie said it. The Hazelwood numbers are very encouraging in terms of metrics of number of violations and this and that, but absolutely anecdotally, not close to the investment level has occurred. It's just the reduction in offenses, so to speak.
We have a handle on the code violations if they're happening mostly on homes that are rentals versus home owner occupied.
No, and I know we didn't update that specifically this time, and I know that's a stereotype, but I know a handful of years ago when we went through that, we found there was no discernible difference. And in fact, in many cases, the surprise was home ownership actually had more violations because they were serial violators. Landlords, if they get a notice, they tend to clean it up because it's an investment property for them.
Real quickly, this is an incredible program. It's been very successful. I just think we need to be careful if we set a cap that we kind of leave a lot of room for high construction costs. Because obviously that's something that it's going to be hard to build a $400,000 house with brand new construction. So
Can't
I think
control
we
it.
may just be careful that we don't go too low and make it unattractive. That's all I have to say. But I love the program, and you can't argue that it's not been successful.
That gets at an important part of this program. If the goal is to tear down and build new, or if the program is trying to push people to remodel, to invest. And for sake of making this conversation really long, maybe it's a conversation for later, but once this has maybe run its course or we scale it back, is there opportunity to look at something else to say, okay, now we've kind of gotten, the low-hanging fruit. Is there something we can look at to say, okay, there's all of these homes out there that maybe need a little help, having some kind of a grant program or something to help those folks that say, okay, we really need to redo our driveway, or we need to do some upgrades, maybe not $50,000 worth, but some kind of a match to help those people improve their home and stay, rather than selling and tear down and build new.
Know that the county used to go through the banks, and I think there's only like one bank now.
That's right.
Left that did HIP loans, home improvement project loans. I actually participated in one of those. We did our master bathroom. To your point on remodeling, I don't know if that program is still in existence or not. It was.
It's still advertised on the county website, and in fact, the bank is in Blue Ash North Star, I believe it's called, on
North side.
Kenwood North.
North side.
Thank you, North Side.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a loan that is 3% below interest rates. The interest rate is 3% below prevailing rates.
5-year loan.
Mhm.
I suspect with the interest rates the last few years, it just wasn't much of it was just as cheap to go to your bank. It may be something that gets reinvigorated as loans are now back up to 7%.
Mhm.
I think if we wanted to put more emphasis on helping people stay in their homes and not just have to tear down, maybe we could look at that minimum investment of $50,000 figure. So I know when people do work on their homes, they're not necessarily looking to spend $50,000, but could you drop it to $25,000, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're fine doing that. I think in our experience, when we dealt with the program, came to the realization, which is why we ended up at 50. I mean, you can drop 25. I think an investment of $25,000 probably won't cause an increase in your taxes anyways. And so you can put it in. I just want you to know, practically speaking, I don't think, if I can put a $25,000 new bathroom, they're not likely to change my taxes.
Having representing the Acadia neighborhood, I've talked to a lot of people who have the older houses, not the new build houses. And while I hear a lot of concern that things are changing, I don't hear a lot of, I can't stay here because. They seem to be people who are in a natural transition. I'm going to leave this house and move to other housing because this doesn't meet my needs anymore, or someone has deceased or whatever. And that's when these houses are turning over. I haven't met a lot of people who are telling me, you know, I have some pressure that is making me leave and I need some help to stay. And maybe that's just maybe I'm ignorant of some facts that I don't have yet. But the other thing that was interesting to me as I was reading this was I expected the rental numbers to be higher. And I wonder, is there any sense, do we suspect that there are more rentals hiding? I mean, if I own one other home, how are you going to know that I do that? Or, you know, if I don't fill out the paperwork, is it hard to hide that sort of thing?
You have to register with the county and you have to file taxes with us. And there's a registration process. So I would say it's pretty rare, or you could do it on a limited basis, but eventually, yeah, you're going to, yeah, so.
I'll add, it's been pretty consistent since I've been tracking for almost 15 years. We're always going to have 500 single family rentals in Blue Ash. That's what I've come to terms with. If we can build more apartments, we're still going to have 500 single family rentals. So it's stayed very steady. That's the good news, hasn't increased.
Where were we?
Okay, well, I mean, do we want to just think about it on amongst ourselves and revisit this? I mean, it sounds like we kind of have a lot of different ideas, but we don't obviously we don't have to make a decision tonight, and I don't think we should because we're all over the place. But something maybe I go home and think about.
Let me offer, in the spirit of helping you along and advance this, I heard somewhat of a consensus for a cap. So why don't Kelly and I and Dan work on, you know, drafting at least that? You know, that sounds like something you're unified, or at least a majority seem to be unified around. And then
Pros
from
and
there,
cons.
what?
Pros and cons.
No, I think we would just draft. I mean, I
Just a
hear some
number.
consensus. Yeah, we'll just try to figure out a number, and then from there, it gives you something you can react to. And then with that piece of draft amended legislation, you could then add things to it. Sometimes it's easier when you have something concrete in front of you. So
Yeah.
if you want us, we'll just go ahead and take that initiative and start draft. We won't put it on the agenda for your approval. We'll just draft something and get it to you then, at least with that. And we'll think about some of the other things you talked about and maybe throw some other tweaks in there. And that way you have something you can react to. And it's easier sometimes to edit someone else's work than the author your own, right? So, are you okay with us doing that? So,
I am, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Talked about potentially reducing the size. I didn't really hear anybody else agree or disagree, but what wasn't in here was increasing the space. It sounds like that's not really.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't hear an increase. I did hear the decrease. I heard a cap. And then there's some other secondary things. So we'll do that. And then there's no hurry on it, but at least give you an opportunity to kind of think about that.
Just as we're saying, no one's talking about increasing the size of this. What would be the workload of, and what would it be required to, it sounds like it would have to be a separate district to do something in Hazelwood. Is that
But
significant work? Or?
Just a new district, yeah. It's not significant work for you to pass it. It would be a new set of processing by Kelly and others in the county. I hope I'm not underselling it, but I suspect with the housing slowdown and everything like that, I don't think there'll be a lot of work coming out of it the next few years anyways, out of Hazelwood.
And the state has also changed the laws as it relates to CRA, so it's a little bit easier for us to implement. We don't have to get their permission anymore. We just tell them what we're doing, and so it would not be difficult to implement a new program.
You're saying a new program or a new area?
Well, it would be a new, if you were to add Hazelwood, which is not connected to the downtown CRA, it would essentially be a new program. You know, it would stand on its own. We could have all the same terms that you have elsewhere, but it would be its own.
Okay. You wouldn't have to review it with their HOA or, no?
Nope.
Okay.
I think we would, again, want to have hearings. And, before I said we wanted to do that, before I would vote on that, I would want to speak to neighbors there, but
Yeah, and just to be clear, when I don't think I'd be coming back to you with that draft legislation for Hazelwood. I think that's something you need to
No.
really, the one we would do would just be adjusting the existing one. But to your point, if you wanted to start another one, I would just kind of start that on another cycle from this.
We good? Anything else, Kelly?
That's all.
Gordon?
All right, just wanted to give you a quick update on the Plainfield and Hunt project. They've been paving the past couple nights, and this is the finished surface. And they'll be paving tonight. That'll wrap up the surface pavement up until about Skyline Chili. So that's about as far as they're going to go for the finished pavement of the project that they're working on now. So then they're going to open up all the lanes. There will be still some minor lane closures as they're putting in the brick pavers. And then the streetlights are scheduled to go in about 2 weeks or so. And that'll light up that whole area, the Plainfield and Hunt area. So there will be pavement markings going in. Those are temporary. They will add the permanent ones in a couple weeks. And then the expectation is that they're going to be moving to Peppermill on Wednesday. I did want to let you know that because of material delays, we have some products that we're not going to be able to get until probably next year. So that's going to extend our project completion date till mid-July of next year, just because of winter. So once winter hits, concrete pavement companies start shutting down. The asphalt companies start shutting down. So we're kind of at a limited timeline right now with material delays. That's going to create a big problem for us. So just wanted to put that out there so you guys are aware of that. Once we start on Peppermill, we will get that closure done. We will get it back open up. Right now, the tentative timeline is to get it open back before Thanksgiving. So the closure just is necessary to remove the asphalt, change some grades, and then put that back. So just want to put that out there.
Brian Cruz.
You sure? You skipped me.
I
Okay.
didn't. I go left to right.
I do actually have something. Thank you, Mark. If anybody had the opportunity to make their way out to Halloween Walk in the Woods this past weekend, it was just such a great community grassroots event that really serves Blue Ash well. Staff did tremendous job with it. We had an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 people come out for it as well. I don't know how much candy we went through, but I do know it filled half of an office. And we really don't have anything left. We made 2 additional runs as well during the event. So that's a great long-standing event we've had for many, many years. It does really well, and it serves very, very local group of people. So I just want to take, the opportunity to kind of address a couple different things and give a little bit of a recap. I appreciate the enthusiasm and the encouragement that we've had from residents recently and discussions in council about pool and tennis specifically. So just want to take a second, give a little recap with where we're at and some of our plans and thoughts and such. So for the tennis court specifically, I promise that I don't plant people coming in during the middle of budget season to talk to you guys about rec projects. But even though it may look like that, however, I've had great discussions with folks from the community and internally. At the same time of some of these discussions, we have already been planning for some improvements at the tennis court. So we have a couple bids and options together to put together some remedies that are more temporary, but to fix the cracks, et cetera, at the tennis courts that we'll be proposing for the 2023 budget. So that should get us through for a little while and make a great improvement aesthetically and playability for next year. The pool's a little bit different of conversation. Of course, we've been concentrating on the pool for quite some time. It's been in our sites for a while. We know what we're working with. We've got a 40-year-old pool. It functions, it works great. However, it's long in the tooth. To go back a couple years, as you all know, we spent $2 million on the children's pool. That was probably phase 1 of some of those renovations and plans. It's been very successful. It's doing really well. We put together a feasibility study, which you were never presented because something called COVID came around, and it was right before the pandemic. And we worked actually together with a local architect, put together a professional feasibility study for the pool, looking at its issues and possible remedies and such that we can put in place for a full pool replacement. Since then, of course, we've been working through the pandemic and on other projects. As we work our way into next year, I just wanted to mention as a Parks and Rec director, there's nothing more that I would want to work on every project. David says it perfectly. You can have anything, you just can't have everything. Is that it? But we're loaded next year with projects, just like we have been the past 10 years. I would just want to say that it would be quite a burden for our staff to work next year towards a goal of anything sooner than 2025 for the pool. for what that would take. Development of a pool and construction to begin in August of next year would be really, really difficult for us. We're going to be concentrating on town square, golf maintenance building, et cetera. We've got some projects ahead of us, but it's in our sights. We absolutely would love to do something with it. I'm sure I have staff over at the rec department that wake up dreaming about building a new pool. It's something that we'd love to do. It's just a matter of prioritizing and timing those projects to make them happen.
Thank
Mark.
you.
Appreciate it.
Counselor Pacheco.
I just want to wish everybody a happy Halloween on Monday night and make a bold prediction that at First Energy Stadium in Cleveland, the Bengals are going down. I don't know why, having watched the Browns play.
Hey,
I don't know
Brian, I'll be
why.
there.
But
Is this
Brian,
attorney from Cleveland?
no, Brian Cruz is with me on that one and no one else is. So
I'll
thank
be
you.
there, Brian.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. Well, then now I'm betting all the way on that. And the Browns are getting 3.5 at home. So there you go.
Councilman Zerwanka.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilwoman Schneider. Councilman Gath.
I don't often toot my own horn, but I am
Oh,
going
but
to
you're
toot
going to,
my own
apparently.
horn tonight. Yes, I am. I would like everyone to know that I am single-handedly responsible for a day on Monday last week where nothing happened for our fire department. We had 4 false alarms and 2 slip and falls. And then on Tuesday of this week, I rode in a car, and by my presence, I assume, the officer who was carrying me around said he has rarely worked a shift where he has not been dispatched even one time. He wrote some warnings to show me that they are doing things, and he must have driven 50 miles in that shift trying to find something that looked like police work for him to do. So I don't have the time to do that every day, but if ever there is concern, apparently all I have to do is get in the vehicle and all emergencies cease. I do want to thank the fire department and Captain Lou and the police department for their hospitality. It is really nice to get to see those folks who are working and to know that they are doing it for the right reasons. They are certainly there to serve. They do a lot of things that a lot of other similar agencies don't do, and I'm proud that they're part of Blue Ash. Finally, as you work through the tennis stuff, Brian, it sounds like you're in conversation with folks. I want them to be very clear that if we put in a 4-year fix, that means they're not getting tennis courts for 4 years. I understand there's a couple options that you're looking at, and if they just, their input is, yeah, let's do the nicer one. I want them to be very clear that that doesn't mean they're going to get tennis courts in 2 years.
So Gordon will be happy to have you ride along with the snow plows all winter long, whenever there's a blizzard.
Well,
Since you volunteered, we will
after
be
it
knocking your door at
happens-
2 a.m.
After it happens, it's too late. But
Well, when it's coming, when it's in the
Yes,
Indiana
that's what I'm
border,
saying. That's-
we will get you in the truck. We'll
Yeah.
drive around and not plow. We'll just
Yeah.
drive around and keep it away.
I think anything in the 10-day forecast, we could probably take care of, set the time then, but once it's happening, I can't unring the bell.
And Brian, I got a lifeguard job for you too.
He's got lifeguards.
For you also.
Is that like mowing grass or get on the mower and, yeah, okay.
Councilman Capell.
Yeah, just a couple lighthearted things. When I was with the fire department that day, I was on 8 calls. So I guess you're better luck than I am. People were healthier when you're riding with them.
Point of order, that is not luck. I think the evidence shows it's something.
And then I do appreciate the updates we got on the projects. And I will vouch, I know our department heads are doing everything they possibly can to keep things going, even in light of supply chain issues, which are making it harder to get the things that you need to get to keep everything going. And then just the last one is on, we all get hit with with telephone scam attempts all the time. And so on Tuesday, November 15th, I'm going to be giving a presentation about 20 minutes in length regarding the scams that are out there, how they get people, how you can protect yourself, and then even to have a little fun on how you can fight back against the people doing the scamming. And one part of this that I think may especially have a little interest from the government perspective is I'm going to do a few minutes on what are called scam packs. They're legally set up as political action committees because that way they can get around the do not call list and call you. And what they do is they typically call in and they say, you know, we're doing a fundraising drive in your area to help police, fire, veterans, wounded veterans, autistic children, breast cancer survivors, you name it, they're doing it to pull at your heartstrings. And what's happening is when you give them money, about 97 to 99% of it goes right back into their administrative and consulting costs. The actual people they're allegedly helping get pretty close to zero. And I know that this frustrates police and fire departments especially because what these people are doing is they're calling and they're using the good name of your police and fire department they make you think that you're giving money on their behalf. They're not getting a single thing out of it. So that's going to be, oops, lost my phone here. Tuesday, November 15th, a little after 7 o'clock at Frame USA. And after I talk for about 20 minutes, I'd encourage you to stay after that because the other speaker is someone we're all quite familiar with, Jim Myers. He's going to talk about let's get this up. The evolution of the U.S. Secret Service. If you know Mr. Myers, you know the work he's put in for his public service to the country, whether it's Secret Service, military, community involvement to this day is unmatched. And so he'll talk for about an hour on that topic. I'd invite everybody to either come on out and hear us, or it should be online if you go to, I think, Empower You Ohio. And I'll send a link around to a few people after we're done when we speak, because these scammers cost people billions of dollars a year. We need to know how to fight back against them. And even if you feel you're relatively immune to it, they hit the elderly hard. So if you have older relatives, older friends, this is something that may help them not be a victim in the future. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cole.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Javari.
Yes, I have a couple of things. Number one, in your absence, I welcome 123rd Air Control Squadron at our park. And there were more than 200 to 300 people early in the morning. They were there and they were celebrating and having a picnic, family picnic. It was a great efforts and people really enjoyed it and loved it. So that's the one thing. And the second thing I have is that I am celebrating our New Year from India. It's Diwali and it's a New Year also at the same time. So I just like to, it is like, Trump light over the darkness and all those kind of things and everything. And we celebrate with the fireworks and the sweet to distribute and just say, hey, Happy New Year and something like that. So I have brought some sweets here. I like to pass it on to every one of them, if you allow me to.
Of course, whatever.
So yeah, that is our Diwali. So we are enjoying very much. So I just want to say Happy New Year. And if you can tell me Happy New Year also.
Can I talk while you're passing, or do you want?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Well, happy Diwali. And I learned from my next door neighbors, it's Diwali, not
Yes,
Diwali.
Happy Diwali.
The only thing I have is I want to, definitely give thanks to Councilman Gath for his service to our city, decreasing crime and fire and ambulance runs. I mean, you have never been,
Jamie,
I've
will
never
you
been
make
so
sure-
proud of you.
will you Make sure that makes the minutes.
That's all I have. We're going to move into executive session for personnel matters to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, and also for property acquisition, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property at competitive bidding, if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So move.
Second.
Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Zerwanka, Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Javari,